Chapter 11 You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Humiliated Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Just then, Director Lin's secretary, Xiao Zhang, said with a smile, "There are many beautiful and capable women working in our hospital, and young men will often come here to propose to them." Mu Chen glanced at Roses before he asked solemnly, "It seems like this place doesn't need any equipment. After all, there's no space for the equipment at all." The atmosphere grew heavy and tense immediately. At this moment, the young nurses finally noticed the newcomers. When they saw the two newcomers, they could not help but inhale sharply. The two men with their strict director were incredibly handsome. Meanwhile, Xiao Zhang felt that his attempt to lighten the situation had bitten his arse. Director Lin's expression was stern as he barked, "What's this mess? Is this still the nursing department of a hospital? How can it be so messy? Secretary Zhang, hurry and throw these flowers out." Left with no other choice, Xiao Zhang hurried forward and grabbed the flowers closest to him, and began to throw them out. The nurses were dumbfounded at this moment. Secretary Zhang bellowed to the people behind him, "Why are you standing there in a daze? Hurry and clean this up." After he finished speaking, he snuck a glance at Mu Chen and Ching Che. As expected, Mu Chen's expression had eased up. Mu Chen pointed to the spot where the Roses just vacated and said lightly to Director Lin, "We've taken an interest in a new type of nursing device. We'll send it to you for a trial first. The group will bear the cost." Director Lin was overjoyed upon hearing Mu Chen's words. "Thank you, Mr. Mu. Thank you, Mr. Mu." Then, Mu Chen turned around and walked out. "Let's go to the canteen, and have a look. The doctors work hard, so we must ensure that they have a healthy diet." Director Lin hurried after Mu Chen and Ching Che. He said with barely concealed enthusiasm, "Okay. I understand. Mr. Mu, this way. Please come this way." At this moment, only a group of dazed young nurses and the Roses that were brutally thrown out by the director's secretary were left. One of the nurses regained her senses first and asked, "Who's that? I've seen him in financial programs on TV. He's Mu Chen, the president of the Mu Group and the favorite grandson of the old madam of the Mu family," someone replied softly in a voice filled with awe. "Heavens! Is that true? Why did he show up in our hospital, don't you know? Our hospital is owned by the Mu family. Didn't you see the director's attitude? Where did he say he was going? The canteen. Ah. I'm hungry. Let's go eat. I'm hungry as well. Me too. Let's go." With this, the young nurses all swarmed to the canteen. Meanwhile, Feng Man, who was left standing in front of the nurse's desk, gritted her teeth as she stared at the Roses in the trash can by the door. Feng Man was annoyed. Those people only went after the rich and powerful. Were they not just flattering her a moment ago? She scoffed as she thought to herself, "What president? Fu Lu will also become a president in the future. I'll be the future president's wife. What's so great about donating equipment? I can't wait to see the director bowing to me and flattering me after I marry Fu Lu." Then, she picked up the phone, wanting to call Fu Lu to complain to him. She wanted him to comfort her. However, before Feng Man could place the call, the head nurse walked over with a fierce expression on her face and said, "Feng Man, are these roses yours? Clean them up immediately. As mentioned earlier, no one's allowed to send flowers to the nurse's station anymore. We are medical professionals who treat illnesses and save people, we must not forget our duty. Quick! Clean it up." After she finished speaking, she walked away with her head held high. Feng Man's chest heaved up and down and her breathing quickened as she tried to suppress her boiling rage. At this moment, she was even more determined to resign and leave this place in a grand manner so that these arrogant women would be green with envy. Chapter 12 You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Canteen Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The canteen for the hospital staff was located in the basement. It was spacious and could accommodate almost 1,000 diners at the same time. Although it was no longer peak hour, there were still many people in the canteen. Director Lin walked next to Mu Chen and Cheng Che as Secretary Zhang pointed out areas of the canteen that needed improvement. Mu Chen's gaze swept through the lunch crowd in the canteen. His eyes darted past a sea of people in white coats. It was a tall order for him to find her in this crowd. When Cheng Che realized it would be difficult to find the person they came here for, he could not help but feel worried. He lowered his voice and suggested to Mu Chen, "Why don't you call her?" However, Mu Chen's gaze was already locked on someone at this time. He said solemnly, "Cheng Che, listen to Director Lin's requests and come up with a proposal. I'm going to eat first." He did not wait for a reply before he strode away. Meanwhile, Director Lin and Secretary Zhang exchanged a glance, wondering if this aloof President Mu was upset again. They quickly raised their feet, intending to hurry after him, but were stopped by the gentle assistant Cheng. "Secretary Zhang, please continue." "Director Lin, what essentials do you think the hospital needs?" Cheng Che asked politely. Despite the cordial expression on his face, he was fuming inwardly. "Mr. Mu, don't you think you're doing too much just to court a woman?" Although Director Lin and Assistant Zhang were curious about Mu Chen's abrupt departure, they knew they could not just ignore Cheng Che to chase after Mu Chen. Therefore, they could only watch as the big shot walked toward two figures dressed in white coats. Meanwhile, An Jiahui poked the chicken thigh on her plate, still fuming. "Song Ning, you're such a pushover. How can you let that stupid couple go just like that? No, I really can't just stay idle and watch this injustice. That woman is Feng Man, right? I already knew she's a B*TCH the moment I saw her. However, I still can't believe she betrayed you after everything you've done for her." Then, Jia Hui poked Song Ning's forehead with her index finger and said indignantly, "Eat. Eat. Eat. Is that all you think about? How can you remain so calm? Your boyfriend has just been snatched away, and yet, you still have the appetite to eat." Song Ning moved her head to the side to avoid Jia Hu's repeated jabs. Then, she reluctantly put down her chopsticks before she said with a sigh, "An Jiahui, you shouldn't discipline a child while you're eating. It'll affect my mental health. Why don't you despicable child?" "I'm furious," and Jia Hui growled as she poked two holes into the chicken on her plate with her chopsticks. At this moment, a shadow fell over the two women. Before they could react, a figure swiftly slipped into the seat next to Song Ning. "Song Ning, I'm hungry." Mu Chen's voice was low and gentle. And Jia Hui, who was sitting across from Song Ning, was so shocked that her mouth was so wide open that an entire egg could fit into her mouth at this moment. Song Ning was similarly shocked as well when she saw Mu Chen. "Why are you here?" Mu Chen smiled as he said, "I came to invite you to lunch, but I arrived late." Song Ning's cheeks flushed red, and she turned away to avoid Mu Chen's gentle gaze as she said softly, "What do you want to eat? I'll treat you to lunch. You decide." Mu Chen shrugged. With that, Song Ning hurriedly rose to her feet to buy food for Mu Chen. Looking at Song Ning's back as she left in a panic, the corners of Mu Chen's lips lifted slightly. And Jia Hui, who was sitting across from Mu Chen now, still had not recovered from the shock. Mu Chen, who was in a good mood, nodded to Jia Hui. "Hello. Who are you?" And Jia Hui finally found her voice. She was stunned that she was still holding onto the chopsticks that were stuck in the chicken thigh. "My name's Mu Chen," Mu Chen introduced himself. And Jia Hui stared at Mu Chen before her eyes shifted to Song Ning, who was taking a plate from the counter at this moment. Her eyes continued darting between the two for quite a while. Seeing in Jia Hui's reaction, Mu Chen continued to say, "I want to be with Song Ning, but she hasn't agreed to my request yet." To confirm she was not dreaming, and Jia Hui ruthlessly bit her tongue. The pain sobered her up immediately. Then, she finally put the chopsticks down and straightened her back before she said, "Hey, handsome, you have great taste. What did you say your name was again?" "Mu Chen." And Jia Hui nodded. Then, she began to earnestly promote her friend. "Mu Chen. Alright, Mu Chen. Ning is gentle, kind, beautiful, and capable. Every year, she gets the highest number of scholarships, and she's our professor's favorite student. She. Chapter 13. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Props Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, I know. That's why I want to pursue her. Can you help me?" Mu Chen interrupted and Jia Hui's incessant chattering. Contrary to expectations, and Jia Hui shook her head. No, Mu Chen was taken aback by Jia Hui's blunt and succinct reply. "Ning is my best friend, so I won't do anything against her wish or betray her. I admit you're handsome, and Ning doesn't seem to dislike you, but I'll always be on Ning's side. I don't object to you pursuing her, but I won't help you." And Jia Hui made her stance exceptionally clear. Mu Chen could not help but reevaluate the naive-looking young woman sitting in front of him. In the end, he had no choice but to compromise. "Fine. Then, can you help me take care of her? If someone bullies her, please tell me immediately, alright? Are you trying to win Ning over by being the hero?" the quick-witted Jia Hui asked. Mu Chen shook her head. "No, don't tell her about this. I just don't want her to be mistreated from now on. I'll make sure everyone who dares to bully her suffers twice as much. However, I can be with her 24 hours a day. I think we're allies regarding this matter. You don't want to see her getting bullied as well, right?" "Of course." And Jia Hui replied immediately. Clearly, Mu Chen's negotiation skills worked on her. At this moment, Song Ning brought Mu Chen's food back to the table. She placed the plate in front of him before she said apologetically, "There isn't much food left, so you'll have to fill your stomach with this first." Mu Chen smiled as he said, "It's okay. I'll eat a little first. You can cook for me tonight to make up for this." "What?" And Jia Hui turned to look at Song Ning immediately with an expression of disbelief. What did the man say? Did he ask Song Ning to cook for him tonight? Song Ning could not ignore Jia Hui's probing gaze, so she introduced the two. "This is my classmate, Jia Hui. Jia Hui, this is Mu Chen." And Jia Hui stared at Song Ning intently as she asked, "And?" Song Ning replied in confusion, "And what?" And Jia Hui pointed to Mu Chen and asked, "You're going to tell his name, and that's it?" Song Ning could not wait to knock some sense into Jia Hui at this moment. Mu Chen reached out and patted Song Ning's head as he said to Jia Hui, "Don't make things difficult for her. She hasn't made up her mind about accepting me yet." Song Ning felt her heart stirred and Mu Chen patted her head. Mu Chen, who was inwardly repulsed by the food, did not eat much. He put the chopsticks down and asked, "Song Ning, where are you going this afternoon?" Song Ning hesitated briefly before she replied, "The lawyer's office." Then, Mu Chen glanced at the time before he said, "It just happens that I'm free in the afternoon, so I'll accompany you." "There's no need for that." Song Ning instinctively refused him. "Are you sure you don't need me there as a prop? Mu Chen asked meaningfully. Song Ning fell silent when she heard these words. Mu Chen seized the opportunity and patted her shoulder as he said, "Let's go now." Song Ning knew Mu Chen's words were not without reason. After all, the key to obtaining the inheritance her mother left her was a marriage certificate to prove she was married. Having Mu Chen, her husband, accompany her could only help her case. Under everyone's watchful gaze, Mu Chen and Song Ning left the canteen. The couple left the hospital and drove away in Mu Chen's car, leaving a panicked Cheng Che and the director of the hospital behind. Assistant Cheng, Mr. Mu L. Left, Secretary Zhang stuttered. Yes. I saw it. I'm not blind, Cheng Che thought to himself. However, outwardly, he said with a smile, I've written down the requests all of you mentioned earlier. After I return, I'll write up a proposal for President Mu. The development and upgrade of our hospital is the focus of our company this quarter, so I hope you can provide more valuable insight on problems that exist daily at work and the management of the hospital. We hope to achieve the best result this time around. Cheng Che's words effectively drew the attention of the leaders in the hospital away from Mu Chen. Meanwhile, the doctor in the white coat had long left the hospital. Chapter 14. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Lawyer Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. At this moment, Song Ning stood at the front desk of Jiaqing Law Firm, feeling slightly nervous. She was excited to see what her mother left her, but she felt nervous and melancholic at the same time. Mu Chen reached out and gently patted her shoulder to comfort her. Song Ning turned around and looked at him gratefully. In order to divert Song Ning's attention, Mu Chen said, Song Ning, you still haven't given me a reply to what I said this morning. Song Ning asked in a daze, what are you talking about? Mu Chen chuckled as he brushed the loose hair by the side of her face and tucked it behind her ears. Did you selectively forget what I said? I said I want to be with you. Upon hearing Mu Chen's straightforward confession, Song Ning's cheeks flushed red immediately. She was so frightened by his words in the morning that she fled and buried herself with work all morning to avoid thinking about those words. She was certain she would forget it by evening. Who knew he would bring it up again? Mu Chen glanced at her reddened ears before he said softly and solemnly, Song Ning, at the very least, you don't hate me, right? Then, why don't we try to fall in love with each other? I have no experience with relationships, and you're the same. Why don't we experience this together? We're already married anyway. She looked up at Mu Chen and refuted his words, that's not true. I had a boyfriend. Mu Chen was briefly taken aback by her response. When he regained his senses, he could not help chuckle wryly. It seemed like she had a tendency of focusing on the wrong point. But you haven't experienced love, silly. Then, he rubbed her head after he finished speaking. At this moment, a soft voice rang in the air. Ms. Song, Ednel. Co. Song Ning quickly turned around. Yes, that's me. She quickly followed the lawyer into the office. However, it did not take long before she returned to Mu Chen, who was sitting in the rest area. Mu Chen looked up at her with a smile. She lowered her gaze as her cheeks turned pink and said in a slightly pleading tone, please come into the office with me. Mu Chen rose to his feet and patted her head again. Aren't you glad I came with you? Song Ning only bit her lower lip in response. In the lawyer's office. Mu Chen caught sight of their marriage certificate on the table as soon as he walked in. The lawyer, whose surname was Yang, was a man in his 40s with a friendly smile on his face. He looked at Mu Chen before he asked Song Ning, Ms. Song, is this your husband? Song Ning nodded. Yes. Following that, Lawyer Yang began to explain with a smile on his face, okay. Ms. Song Ning, your mother, Ms. Zhuang Yi, previously entrusted me with a key to a bank safe. She instructed me to only hand the key to you when you show up with your husband at 26 years old and assure me that you're living happily. I have verified your ID card, your marriage certificate and your husband. Now, I would like to ask Mr. Mu Chen, are you happy? Song Ning was startled and puzzled when she heard this. Isn't the question meant for me? However, Lawyer Yang maintained the smile on his face and looked at Mu Chen. Mu Chen reached out to pat Song Ning's head again, trying to calm her down. Then, he replied, Lawyer Yang, it's an honor and blessing to be able to marry Song Ning. I'm very happy, and I'm willing to stay with her and protect her for the rest of my life. I'll make her the happiest woman on earth. Lawyer Yang beamed with joy as he exclaimed, "That's great. Fantastic. Ms. Zhuang Yi would be very happy if she were here to hear your words." "Not bad, lad." Then, Lawyer Yang handed the document file in his hand to Song Ning and urged her, "You should go and see what your mother left you." Then, he looked at Mu Chen meaningfully before he added, "From now on, our law firm will be your legal advisor for life." Upon hearing these words, Mu Chen put his hands around Song Ning's shoulders and said confidently, "Don't worry, we'll never get divorced." Song Ning looked at Mu Chen in surprise when she heard the determination in his words. "Let's go to the bank," Mu Chen said softly as he lowered his head. Song Ning's attention was focused on the document file in her hand that she did not realize she had walked out of the law firm with her arm around Mu Chen's arm. As soon as she entered the car, she opened the file and found a unique key inside. She only jolted back to her senses when Mu Chen leaned over to fasten the seatbelt for her. She looked at him shyly, at a loss for words. Upon seeing this, Mu Chen ruffled her hair and said, "You'll know the answer to your question soon." Song Ning turned her head away from him, letting his hand fall, before she softly said, "Your action makes me feel like a puppy." Mu Chen burst into laughter when he heard her words. Chapter 15. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Love Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Song Ning stared at Mu Chen intently and solemnly asked, "Do you really want to be with me?" Mu Chen nodded. "Yes." Song Ning lowered her eyes, causing her long lashes to fan out under her eyes, as she said, "But I don't know how to be a loving partner." She had always been up to her neck with her matters, working tirelessly like a spinning top. Fu Luo, who had always been her life, would have fun on his own when she was busy. She did not care about what he did when she was not with him. When she had time, she would eat or watch movies with him. That was about the summary of their relationship. Fu Luo was the man her mother had chosen for her, and Aunt Yunyao vouched for him as well. Perhaps it was due to these reasons that she did not expect such a tragedy to happen to her like those from the previous generation. She felt she had messed as well. She was not affectionate, or perhaps, she did not know to be affectionate, leading to the current mess. Mu Chen chuckled before he said reassuringly, "I don't know much either. Why don't we take our time and try to fall in love with each other? Let's interact with each other in the way that we're most comfortable with, fall in love with each other." Song Ning's eyes widened imperceptibly as realization dawned on her. Perhaps, this was the reason she and Fu Luo separated. Then, she said decisively, "All right. Mu Chen. I'm willing to give this a try. However, if one day you decide we're not compatible, you have to promise to be honest with me." Mu Chen looked at her earnestly as he interjected, "Don't worry, I won't cheat on you or betray you. I promise you in the name of my beloved grandma." Song Ning was slightly taken aback when she saw how serious he was. When she regained her senses, she said, "All right, Mu Chen. Let's date. I'm willing to be with you." After he inserted the key into the ignition, he ruffled Song Ning's hair again. "It's a promise then." With this, Song Ning's racing heart gradually calmed down. When Song Ning and Mu Chen arrived at the bank, a staff led them to the safe and left them for privacy. When Song Ning found the safe according to the number given to her, she was dumbfounded. She had expected a small safe, but the safe in front of her was even taller than her. Flustered and at a loss, she looked at Mu Chen. Mu Chen gently took the key from her hand and opened the safe for her. The safe opened, revealing 4 huge camphor boxes. Mu Chen reached out and brought a box out before placing it on the ground. Song Ning touched the copper clasp on the box as she gently said, "This is the dowry my grandma gave to my mother. In my mother's hometown, camphor trees are planted in the yard when a baby girl is born. When the daughter gets married, the parents would use the camphor trees to make a camphor box to store the dowry they prepared for their daughter." Mu Chen asked in slight confusion, "Dowry? That's a very old tradition. Do people still do that nowadays?" Song Ning's gaze softened as she explained, "You're right. It's a very old tradition. When my mother was born, my grandparents had already moved to the city. However, they asked their relatives in the countryside to help them plant a camphor tree in the courtyard of their old house." Jiangnan thought to himself, as it turns out, her grandparents are from Jiangnan. No wonder she carries the grace and temperament of Jiangnan women. After a moment, he urged her, "Open it and have a look." She unlocked the brass clasp and gently lifted the lid. As the scent of camphor wood permeated wafted in the air, Song Ning saw a white dress lying in the box. It was a wedding dress. Mu Chen gently prompted her, "Why don't you pick it up and have a look?" She nodded slightly in response. With Mu Chen's help, she carefully took the wedding dress out. Mu Chen was 1.88 meters tall, so it was easy for him to show her the entire dress when he held it up. Tears welled up in her eyes as she reached out and gently stroked the wedding dress. Her voice quivered as she said, "This was sewn by my mother. I know this for sure because I recognize my mother's sewing technique. I don't know when she made this for me." Upon hearing her words, he looked down and discovered the wedding dress had exquisite embroidery. The threads of the embroidery were similar to the wedding dress. He could not identify the flowers, but each of the flower stamens was carefully embroidered with small pearls. When he held the dress higher, the movement made the pearls shimmer. Due to their similar colors, it looked as though the dress itself was shimmering. He could not help but sigh in admiration. How ingenious! When he looked at Song Ning again, a smile gradually appeared on his face as he imagined how beautiful she would look in this wedding dress. Meanwhile, Song Ning reached out and clutched the dress against her chest as she whispered, "Mom." Chapter 16. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Items left behind. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The second box contained a red Chinese dress gown. Its embroidery was even more complicated and exquisite. The Chinese style clothing complemented the embroidery so it looked as exquisite as a work of art. Mu Chen looked at Song Ning for an explanation. Song Ning gently traced the embroidery with her finger as she explained, "This is a traditional wedding dress. My mother is best at embroidery. I have no idea when she started preparing this." When she spoke about her mother, her voice would hitch. Seeing this, Mu Chen patted her shoulder and comforted her. "Your mother loved you very much. It's obvious she wished very much for you to be happy." Song Ning nodded slightly in response. "Mom, I'll definitely be happy." When Mu Chen saw tears begin to streak down Song Ning's face like a broken string of pearls, he picked up a piece of tissue from the table and handed it to her. He reminded her in a soft voice, "Don't let the tears fall on the wedding gown." She nodded gently and closed the box. The third box was full of embroideries. Even Mu Chen, who did not know much about embroidery, could tell they were top-notch embroideries and were of high value. After taking a careful look, Song Ning found a small purse in the corner. It was made of aqua blue silk and was embroidered with yellow satin thread. The yellow looked particularly vibrant against the blue silk. She picked it up gingerly and stroked it lightly before she showed it to Mu Chen. "This is the first pouch I made. My mother said that the first gift a girl should give her sweetheart is a pouch sewn by herself. At that time, when I was only 8 years old, she forced me to make a pouch. I didn't expect her to keep it." Mu Chen plucked the purse out of Song Ning's hands. Compared to the masterpieces in the box, the stitches on this purse were not as exquisite. It was embroidered with an orchid on one side and a small bird on the other. The stitches were not delicate at all. Still, it was simple and lovely. As he held the purse in his hand, he asked teasingly, "So this is meant for your sweetheart? Then, I guess I have no choice but to accept this." Embarrassed, Song Ning reached out to grab it, but Mu Chen raised his arm high beyond her reach. "This is too ugly." She grabbed his sleeve. "I don't dislike it at all. I like it very much." Mu Chen smiled happily as he kept his hand out of her reach. Song Ning blushed when she heard his words. Then, Mu Chen nudged her gently and prompted her, go and see what else is there. As soon as Song Ning turned away, he put the purse away. He was really lucky today. How could he let his good luck go to waste? At this moment, a soft sigh escaped from Song Ning's lips. The embroideries in this box are all my mother's work. Her studio wasn't doing well back then, and she was struggling to run her business. I don't know why she didn't sell these embroideries back then. My mother probably has her reasons. I will cherish them. Following that, Mu Chen helped her open the fourth box. Both of them were dumbfounded when the box was opened. The inside of the box that was lined with white silk was empty, there was nothing in there. In the end, they could only move the empty box to the side with the other 3 boxes. Confused, Mu Chen looked at Song Ning for answers again. Song Ning shook her head slightly as she speculated in a soft voice, I don't understand either. Maybe my mother didn't have time to put whatever she intended into this box. Mu Chen could not help but nod in agreement. She had said her mother passed away suddenly. Despite being seriously ill, the sudden death had nothing to do with the illness. Therefore, he thought her speculation was reasonable. Seeing the crestfallen expression on her face, Mu Chen patted her shoulder lightly. Don't be sad. We will fill this box in the future. When he saw the expression of confusion on her face, he ruffled her hair and explained with a smile, we'll also prepare this kind of dowry for our daughter in the future. We will use these boxes to keep the dowry and pass it on from generation to generation. Song Ning's face heated up as she weakly pushed his hand away. When they were done, Song Ning decided to keep the boxes in the safe. After all, she did not need the things in the boxes for now. With that, Mu Chen helped Song Ning to put the things back into the boxes. Chapter 17 You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Gifts Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. When they were in the midst of putting the items back into the boxes, Song Ning picked a white silk kerchief out of the third box. It was embroidered with delicate pines and cranes on one of its corners. Mu Chen leaned over to have a look before he exclaimed, it's so beautiful. After looking at him, Song Ning flipped the silk kerchief around. Mu Chen was stunned when he saw the back of the silk kerchief. There was a different version of the pines and cranes on the other side of the kerchief. He asked in surprise, double-sided embroidery. Song Ning nodded with an expression filled with pride. Wasn't my mother amazing? Yes. This is a work of art. Mu Chen sighed in admiration. After a moment, Song Ning put the silk kerchief into her bag. Upon seeing this, Mu Chen shook his head and asked, are you going to use it? Are you really fine with using this masterpiece? She asked with a smile, do you think Grandma will be happy to receive this as a gift? Will she obediently receive the treatment if we give her this? Mu Chen was surprised by her words. He did not expect her to care about his grandmother so much. Even at such a moment, she was thinking about his grandmother. When he regained his senses, he nodded and said, Grandma will like it very, very much. Then, Song Ning urged him to clean up the mess quickly so they could return home earlier to see his grandmother. After Mu Chen put the last box back into the safe, he sighed. If you give such an expensive gift to Grandma, she'll start treating you like her granddaughter and treat me like I'm adopted. Song Ning chuckled when she heard him teasing her. During their journey home, Mu Chen asked Song Ning as he drove, what are your plans for the future? Song Ning leaned back in her seat and looked at scenery flashing past through the window before she said, I'll be graduating in a year, so during this time, I'll be relatively busy. I have to work on my graduation thesis and visit the hospital with my professor. I've been struggling to maintain my mother's small studio as well due to my workload. However, after seeing what she left for me today, I'm even more determined to keep the studio running regardless of how difficult it would be. That place was my mother's blood, sweat, and tears. After a moment, he said, take me to the studio tomorrow. Maybe there's something I can do to help. Song Ning stared at Mu Chen silently. When he did not hear a reply from her, he glanced at her from the corners of his eyes before he asked, "What's wrong? You don't believe me. I'll have you know my grandmother brought me with her to sit in during the board of directors meeting when I was just 8 years old." Song Ning shook her head and explained, "No, that's not it. The thing is, I don't understand business matters at all. Can I hire you to help me?" Mu Chen was slightly taken aback. Then, he chuckled and said, "Okay. But I can only work part-time. You don't mind, right?" She shook her head. "It doesn't matter. The studio isn't that big anyway. Moreover, business is dwindling as well. After all, embroidery is a niche nowadays. After my mother passed away, all her assistants were poached away, leaving behind only the mediocre but loyal employees. We're barely breaking even now." She felt slightly embarrassed talking about this. Mu Chen held the steering wheel with one hand as he reached out to rub Song Ning's head lightly. "You only need to focus on your studies. Leave these things to me." As she escaped from his huge hand, she said, "It takes a lot of energy to maintain a business so you can keep the profits if there are any. The only thing I care about is to keep this business running since it's the result of my mother's painstaking effort." He asked with a chuckle, "So you're saying you want to pay me?" Song Ning nodded seriously in response to his question. "That's not enough." Mu Chen shook his head gently. Feeling a little guilty, Song Ning suggested, "Then, I will take care of Grandma for you. I will take care of her forever, not just half a year. What do you think?" Mu Chen shook his head again. She bit her lower lip nervously before she asked, "Then, what do you suggest?" Mu Chen looked at her from the corner of his eyes before he said with a faint smile on his face, "I don't want to be paid. I'm content with having you by my side." Song Ning turned to look at him, stunned by the sight that met her eyes. At this moment, the dappled sunray illuminated his face and tinted his body with a faint glow. His pure eyes and gentle smile looked so dazzling under the sun that she felt as though she had to squint. He was shining so brightly in her eyes. "Mom, are you watching? Did you lead him to me?" Chapter 18. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Relatives Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. When they were at the door of the house, Mu Chen held Song Ning's hand and gently said, "Song Ning, don't push yourself so hard. From now on, you should trust me, rely on me, and let me help you shoulder the burden. You and Grandma just need to sit back and enjoy life." Song Ning lowered her head and bit her lower lip before she softly replied, "I'm already used to doing things on my own and being alone. I don't know how to be a girlfriend. If there's something you're dissatisfied with, you can let me know, and I promise to try harder." Mu Chen reached out and pinched her cheek, freeing her lower lip from her teeth. "Silly girl, just be yourself. I like how strong, independent, courageous, and capable you are. I also like that you're sensible, filial, naive, and innocent. I like everything about you. Remember this. I like you, so there's no need for you to change, understand?" Song Ning was on the brink of tearing up when she heard his words. Meanwhile, Mu Chen felt a pang in his heart when he saw the pitiful expression on her face. He pulled her into his arms and said in an attempt to cheer her up, "Silly girl, don't cry. You need to understand Grandma more. Do you know that no matter the reason you cry, Grandma will definitely blame me for it? It seems like I have no choice but to curry favor with you now." His words successfully made Song Ning laugh. When the couple finally entered the house hand in hand, they heard a commotion from the living room. It seemed very lively, so they did not think much of it and thought it was just noises of laughter and conversations. However, as the noises grew clearer, Mu Chen stiffened and abruptly came to a halt as he clenched his hands tightly. After a beat, he resumed walking. Confused, Song Ning looked up at him and discovered his eyes that were shining with affection and gentleness just a moment ago were incredibly frosty at this moment. In fact, his entire person seemed to emit a bone-chilling aura. At this moment, the butler walked up to the couple. "Young master, young lady, you've finally returned." When the butler spoke, his voice grew increasingly loud, and his tone was arrogant. However, despite his tone, a hint of relief could be seen in his eyes. It was as though he wanted to announce their arrival to everyone. Song Ning found this strange. However, before Song Ning could ponder on the strangeness of the matter, Jiang Jin, who had seen Song Ning, waved and called out, "Ning, you're finally back. Hurry, come over." Song Ning discovered there were a few people sitting on the sofa in the living room. At this moment, all of their eyes were trained on her and Mu Chen's intertwined hands. Flustered, she tried to free her hand from his grip, but he refused to let go. Instead, Mu Chen led Song Ning to Jiang Jin's side before he greeted the guests sitting on the sofa frostily, "Hi, second grandma, aunt, sister.in.law." Jiang Jin reached out and pulled Song Ning to sit next to her. Then, she complained childishly, "Didn't you say you only have half a day of classes today? Where did Mu Chen abduct you? Both of you only care about going on dates and forgot all about me." Amused, Song Ning smiled. Then, she expertly diverted the conversation. "Grandma, why don't I make you something delicious tonight?" "All right." Jiang Jin refused to let go of Song Ning's hand. When Song Ning looked at the unfamiliar faces in front of her, Jiang Jin finally realized she had forgotten to introduce Song Ning. "Oh, Ning, let me introduce you. This is Mu Chen's second grandma, this is his sister.in. Law from his second grandma's side, this is his aunt, and these are his cousins, Tingting and Xiao Xiao." Song Ning wanted to stand up to greet them, but Mu Chen pressed her shoulder down and leaned on the arm of the sofa next to her. Jiang Jin pretended not to see his actions and said to the guest with a smile, "This is Mu Chen's wife, Song Ning. Both of them have already registered their marriage, but they're both too busy to hold a wedding banquet for now. When they finally hold their wedding banquet, everyone must come and help me. I'm an old lady and can't keep up with the current trends. I don't want to ruin Ning's wedding." The guests seemed taken aback by Jiang Jin's words. Then, the second old madam, Ding Hong, stared at Song Ning before she asked, "Jiang Jin, are you serious? When did Mu Chen get into a relationship? Didn't he have a scandal with that lady from the Yi family previously? Why did he turn around and marry someone else? What about the Yi family? If the Yi family finds out about this, they'll be fuming mad." Meanwhile, Mu Chen's sister.in.law, Chu Huanhuan, glared at Song Ning and said mockingly, "That's right, Grandma. Where did this girl come from? Why haven't we heard about her before this? Can any ordinary woman marry into the Mu family just like this? Although Mu Chen doesn't have a mother, he still shouldn't do such a shameful thing, right?" Seemingly encouraged by Chu Huanhuan's words, Mu Chen's two cousins, Mu Tingting and Mu Xiao Xiao, even sneered at Song Ning's outfit. "Look at the way she dressed. I even thought she's a new nurse Grandma hired." Jiang Jin's expression soured immediately. Meanwhile, Mu Chen rose to his feet with a darkened expression. Just as he was about to speak, Song Ning grabbed his arm. Chapter 19. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When one of them passes away. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Mu Chen, can you help me check if there are any shredded bamboo shoots and dried tofu in the kitchen? I love to eat those. Oh, can you bring a plate of honeydew out as well? Song Ning hurriedly said as she pushed Mu Chen away from these people with a gentle nudge. Seeing this, Mu Chen's aunt, Mu Lan, chucked. Then, she said with barely concealed sarcasm, "Jiang Jin, she's truly a sensible girl." Jiang Jin's expression soured again. Then, Mu Lan looked at Song Ning and said, "Song Ning, huh? What a good girl. Mu Chen is very picky with women. I have arranged so many dates for him, and yet, he wasn't satisfied with any of them. To be honest with you, we were starting to think that something was wrong with this child. Who knew he would suddenly marry a beautiful woman? Mu Qiao snorted. Aunt, are you blind? What do you mean by beautiful woman? Where's the beautiful woman? How can you call someone who looks like this beautiful? She can't hold a candle to Yi Xian. Mu Qiao. Jiang Jin barked. She was so angry that her body trembled. Song Ning quickly reached out to pat Jiang Jin's back. She called out worriedly, Grandma. Jiang Jin nodded, indicating she knew what to do. With that, Song Ning turned to face these unkind voices with a slight smile on her face. I see that everyone dislikes me. However, I'm sorry to say Mu Chen and I are already married, and there's no turning back. He has also promised me that if we get a divorce, regardless of the reason, he'd transfer all the properties under his name to me. Grandma has also agreed to this. After she finished speaking, she looked at Jiang Jin meaningfully. A smile bloomed on Jiang Jin's face as she chimed in, that's right. Mu Chen even said there's no way they'll get a divorce. The only reason they would be separated is when one of them passes away. The two of them are really a match made in heaven. The second old madam was fuming mad as soon as she heard these words. Meanwhile, Mu Qiao glared at Song Ning and said in a shrill voice, my brother and Yi Xian are a couple. Don't you keep up with entertainment news? Yi Xian agreed to marry my brother after she wins the grand prize. Song Ning smiled sweetly and replied, oh. Is that so? What should I do then? Unfortunately, I married him first. Does Yi Xian want to marry Mu Chen? It seems like it's too late for her though. You should tell her to seize the opportunity as soon as it arises next time. You shameless wench. Mu Qiao's face blanched from anger. Song Ning maintained the smile on her face and continued to say, what's wrong with being shameless in front of a group of unscrupulous people? Wouldn't I be bullied if I'm not shameless? Am I supposed to smile and accept it when someone wants to snatch my husband away? Sorry, I'm not that generous. Ms. Mu, don't you think so? You. Mu Qiao was rendered speechless by Song Ning's words. Jiang Jin smiled and patted Song Ning's hand. Yes, Ning. You're right. At this moment, Ding Hong scowled and said, Jiang Jin, so this is what your granddaughter in law is like. What an uncultured woman. Mu Chen's wife will be the future lady of the family. Do you really think someone like her is capable of taking on that role? Jiang Jin glanced at Ding Hong and said airily, since Mu Chen married her, I'm sure she's capable. If you're not convinced, why don't you persuade Mu Chen to step down? In fact, I don't want him to bear the burden of being responsible for the Mu family. Ding Hong had no choice but to shut when she heard these words. Mulan hastily said with a smile, Aunt Jiang, don't misunderstand. Mu Chen is the most outstanding among the younger generation in our Mu family, so everyone is naturally picky about his other half. Auntie Ding is just too straightforward, so please don't take it to heart. I think Song Ning is a pretty nice girl. It's rare to see you getting along so well with another person. Song Ning, Mu Chen is a filial child. As long as you win over Grandma, Mu Chen will treat you well forever. After she finished speaking, she covered her mouth and laughed. Ding Hong and Chu Huanhuan exchanged a look before they forced themselves to laugh as well. Song Ning, who was now standing behind Jiang Jin, tapped a few acupuncture points on Jiang Jin's back before she sighed and said with a smile, oh, I don't have much in life except for luck. Mu Chen treats me well, and Grandma treats me like her granddaughter. Even Mu Chen is jealous of how close we are. After she finished speaking, she leaned forward and hugged Jiang Jin from the back. Meanwhile, Jiang Jin felt relieved after Song Ning tapped her acupuncture points. As a result, her mood improved as well. Chapter 20 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Send the guests away. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Jiang Jin wore a proud expression on her face as she held the hand of Song Ning, who was standing behind her. I raised Mu Chen, so he's naturally filial to me. Even the woman he married is to my liking. Ding Hong and the others' expressions turned sour. They looked at Mulan meaningfully as though indicating she should speak up. Mulan said with a faint smile on her face, Aunt Jiang, we've had a close tie with the Yi family for generations now. Now that the young master of the Yi family has gotten into politics, we can't underestimate the power of a marriage alliance. Mu Chen, I'm just worried the Yi family will be offended that he abandoned Yi Xian. Oh, Aunt Jiang, Mu Chen is young, and I'm sure he's worked hard to reach where he is today. Everyone was listening intently to Mulan, waiting for her to finish her word. Song Ning looked at the elegant and dignified woman in front of her and could not help but feel curious about her next words as well. Under everyone's watchful gaze, Mulan cleared her throat before she continued to say, but, don't you think it's better if our family takes over all the dealings with the Yi family? That way, even if Yi family were to get offended when they find out about Mu Chen's marriage, our business won't be harmed, right? Song Ning lowered her head as a faint smile appeared on her face. Mu Chen's aunt was rather clever. When Ding Hong heard this, she was enraged. Mulan, what are you talking about? I thought you were worried about Mu Chen, but as it turns out, you're just greedy. Is Zhou Jianbang still dissatisfied with all the benefits he received from the Mu family? How dare you scheme to take over all the Yi family's business? Don't you think you're being too ambitious? After that, Chu Huanhuan pursed her lips and added, sure enough, Aunt Mulan just cares for herself. Mulan paid no mind to the insults and said, all of you are overthinking things. I'm doing this for the good of the Mu family. Do you think the Yi family won't burn bridges with us when they find out Mu Chen has secretly married another woman? Xian and Mu Chen's scandal made headlines. This time, she even won an international award. She's more than worthy to marry our Mu Chen. If you have a better idea, why don't you tell me what you think we should do? If the Yi family tries to bring down our businesses, won't all of you and the Mu family suffer the biggest loss? Apart from Jianbang, can you find a more suitable successor? Ding Hong and Chu Huanhuan were not persuaded, and they ended up bickering. Jiang Jin began to tremble in rage as she watched the scene in front of her. At this moment, Song Ning suddenly called out to the butler, Mr. Jiang. The butler hurried over. Song Ning's voice caught the attention of the noisy women as well. They looked at her in confusion. Young lady. Mr. Jiang then bowed. Send the guests away. I'm going to start cooking for Grandma, Song Ning said to Mr. Jiang. Mr. Jiang was briefly startled by Song Ning's words. However, he quickly recovered and walked toward Ding Hong and the others. He bowed and extended his hand out, indicating they should follow him. Second old madam, young lady and old madam are busy now, if you'd please take your leave. Song Ning could not help but secretly give Mr. Jiang a thumbs up. Ding Hong rose to her feet and pointed at Song Ning as she said furiously, how dare you drive us away? Who do you think you are? Ha! This is our Mu residence. Who gave you the right to speak like that? Do you really think you're the young lady of the Mu family? At this moment, Mu Chen's frosty voice rang in the air. She's indeed the young lady of the Mu family. Ding Hong could not help but withdrew her hand immediately. Mu Chen swept his icy gaze across the guests as he said, I'll say this one more time, Song Ning is the young lady of the Mu family. Whoever has any objection, you can leave the Mu family. I will personally remove her from the family registry. Frightened, Mulan forced a smile on her face and said, Mu Chen, what are you talking about? Why are you so angry? What's going on? Aunt Jiang, please calm him down.